Hey everybody, welcome to the Big Man's Cabana. I'm your host, Matthew J. Lepore, and I am on with a good friend who I can finally have on after months, Roman Mustaccio. He is I say on with everyone, a connoisseur. He goes to Drexel. You're not only a student, but you are a massive power lifter. Dude, there's a good video. I'll put it out so you guys can see it. Of you giving me how to do leg drive, my own personal video.
I remember that.
On how to do all that. But yeah, dude, we've been trying to do this for a while. Then you got busy with school. I got busy, and then now you text me like, let's do this thing, and I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm stealing you whenever I can.
I think you had reached out in November, which was right before the stretch of the holidays, which
you're
just
good.
Kills me every
year. Dude, trust
busy.
Me, you're fine. It's all good. I totally get it. But now we finally have you on. So we'll start with school, and then we'll kind of progress down. But you and I are already talking.
Yeah, we've been
lifting for
talking shit for like half an hour already. Yeah.
Well, it's nice because not everyone so people will I had this woman, Kelly Smith. She's big into lifting and fitness. But I do notice the different conversations that I have with people who just lift.
Yeah. Compared
to people who compete.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't fully understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think the best way to put it is there's a difference between working out and training, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's also not to say that I at heart I'm not a meathead, right?
So am I.
I even if I didn't compete, me and one of my training partners talk about this all the time. Like when I'm 60 and I can't get my arms under a straight bar anymore, I'm still gonna be lifting weights.
Yeah.
You know? It's fun. I like it.
Yeah. So do I.
Competing's icing on the cake. I love competing. I like lifting weights. I love competing.
Mm-hmm. And people don't understand the bite that you get to after a meet.
No,
when I did Beer Muscles, Anthony Rhodes. I don't know if you know him.
Rings a bell.
He moved, but he came to come watch me, and he hasn't competed in a year and a half, and he was just there, and he goes, I gotta compete, dude, and he signed up for a meet. So people don't understand the bite you get, but we'll talk about school and what it's like being a student athlete, because I'll still consider you an athlete, because dude, people don't understand, it is a thing you have to train, there's prep, there's technique, there's all this stuff. You might not be running a 40-yard dash, but
it's just different, right? It's different. The Russians would call it special strengths. It's just different attributes that you're training. But I'm a finance major at Drexel. It's obviously in West Philly. I live in media with my girlfriend, so I just take the train to the city. Right now I'm on co-op, which is an internship with a real estate development company, and I'm taking one class over these 2 semesters, but I'm about to go back into full-time classes, which not looking forward to, but what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? You're not going to have time to train, dude.
No, I'm going to have time to train. That's I made sure of that part.
That's cool. So what does your internship look like? Like what are you doing on a regular day?
Well, it's fully remote. The company is based out of Southwest Florida. They're a real estate developer. I manage the intern team, which is pretty cool. My first co-op was with them.
I'm listening. I'm just going to check that.
You're good. Oh, you're good, I had kind of rolled that first internship with them part-time over the semester, and I started working with them again. I kind of took lead of the intern team, and it's mostly capital acquisition stuff. We're looking for different kinds of lending, equity, and debt, whatnot.
So is that what you want to do, or do you just want to do? Because I remember you said something to me a year and a half ago. You're like, I just want to be able to work and make just enough money.
That's
to
the
always
ultimate
train.
Goal. Yeah. The ultimate goal is to afford the lifestyle that I want to live, which is competing in multi-ply powerlifting, right? And whether that's training with my current crew or wherever life takes me as far as jobs go, and wherever I end up living or building my own place. Again, it's just dependent on how the cards fall. But as long as competing is in the picture, I will be happy and fulfilled in life.
Yeah. Are you gonna start your own West Side Barbell? Be the next Louis Simmons?
I think that's much too high of praise for me, but
I think
I would love I think that would be awesome. The point of having a crew, what the owner of Death Wish Barbell, Ralph Talati, what he's done, and I've been lucky enough to be a part of. Having something like that would be awesome. Staying with that would be awesome. But any kind of multi-ply crew, it's fun. I like that kind of community, that kind of style of training and competing, and how I think multi-ply is really cool in that you get to train in crews all the time, or you should at least. You won't necessarily get to. But
well, one thing that I always see when you post about it is it takes a village.
It does.
So that was one thing with strongman, it's the same way. But when you say that, right, and I'm not just talking about school, I'm just saying just straight like lifting? Like, what does that look like when you say it takes a village? Like, how does that look for you on like a meet day?
Well, to first describe that, you kind of got to understand what multi-ply powerlifting is, right? Or equipped powerlifting in general, as opposed to raw powerlifting, which is squat, bench, and deadlift in a singlet, right?
Yeah.
Multi-ply powerlifting, you'll have briefs, squat suits, bench shirts, deadlift suits, knee wraps, wrist, like all that kind of stuff. And as opposed to single ply, where it's one layer of it, multi-ply is multiple layers of it, right? Multi-ply referring to the plies of equipment you're allowed to wear. And that's, I kind of view it as like the final frontier of extreme powerlifting. They call it like people refer to it as like top fuel, right?
Yeah.
Because as much as, the gear allows you to lift more weights, every layer of equipment you put on makes the competition lift harder to perform with submaximal weights, right? So like bench shirts are a great example, right? Even like a tight enough single ply or a 2 or 3 ply shirt, it takes a certain amount of weight to be able to bring that bar down to touch. And you can argue about, you should be proficient enough to touch whatever percent of your 1 rep max. But the fact of the matter is the material fights you down. That's what it's supposed to do. So you have to have the knowledge of that equipment to know what it's going to take to touch. You have to have the skill and the proficiency to not only manipulate the shirt to touch where you want it to and what you want to touch, but you also have to have the strength to handle, say, 200 or 300 pounds in some cases, more than what you could bench raw. And that's very difficult for, your forearms to handle. So think, say you're 315 raw bencher, right? That's not, too crazy of a number or anything for most people to fathom. Well, you put on a bench shirt and say you're trying to bench 600 now. So think about, yes, the bench shirt supports your pecs, supports your shoulders, but think about what it's not covering. Think about what it's not supporting.
Yeah,
your hips have to be able to stabilize that. Your back has to be able to stabilize that. Your forearms, your wrists, all that kind of stuff. And then as you keep adding multiple layers of equipment, not only does it get, harder to touch, bigger weights that you're handling, but the margin of error gets smaller, right? So like every layer of material you're adding, like the touch point in the shirt, how much leniency you have back and forth.
Yeah.
The difference between a successful press and a dump gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And again, when you think about how much you're magnifying the weights you're putting on there, that's 600 pounds getting thrown at your neck or getting dumped towards your feet. It's terrifying,
scary.
but it's fun at the same time.
So how did you get into multi-ply? Like I remember you told me your story, like when you were, because you lived in China for.
I did. I lived in Beijing for 2 years.
So when you were there, I remember you were like, when you came back, you just got like sucked into lifting.
Yeah.
So how did that start? You come back from Beijing.
All right, I'll run you from the top of me getting into
Go for it.
Strength sports. But so before I had moved to China, I played baseball and I had wrestled. That was how we met. Was like in 7th grade.
Yes.
I was a wrestler. I think you were a freshman at that time in high school playing football, and I liked wrestling, but I didn't love wrestling. I liked being in shape and being strong. Strong.
I know what you mean.
Right? Because in 7th grade, I weighed 75 pounds. So
you were small.
How strong can you be weighing 75 pounds? But so then my world gets turned on its head. I moved to China for 2 years. Well, there's no wrestling over there, and baseball's not very competitive. And the culture of sports in a British school is just very different. It's not as competitive. It's more, kind of play everything, enjoy athletics, which is cool. But then, we get word that we're going to get sent home a year early. So I start thinking to myself, like, if I don't make a change, I'm going to go back and I'm going to keep getting bullied for being skinny, keep being bullied for being weak.
Yeah.
And just, like, I have the opportunity to start lifting weights and come home at least a little bigger, give myself a fighting shot. Because I'm going back to American high school, which is very different than, like, a very prissy, rich international school.
Yeah.
And so I start lifting weights, and I'm like, at first I'm like, this will get me in good shape to come back and wrestle. And then I'm like, well, shit, I'm having a lot more fun doing this than I ever did playing any other sport. I got bit by the iron bug, right? So then I come
is that
back.
What you call it, the iron bug?
Well, yeah, I've heard it called that by a few people.
Yeah, I mean, like, to stop you, but go ahead.
Yeah, but then I come back and I'm still, I'm lifting weights just to lift. And I first kind of fell into bodybuilding because that's, I feel like, a pretty public strength sport. Like, people know about it, like Arnold and whatnot, pumping iron. Then I meet Caleb McLeod at our high school. I don't know if you remember him.
Yes, no, I know him. Yeah,
really good friend of mine, great dude. And at the time, I was a sophomore. No, I was a junior in high school. And he tells me, he's like, "Hey, I did a powerlifting meet." And I was like, that didn't even sound like a real word to me. Like, I thought he made it up. Like, powerlifting. I'm like, that's the most, like, masculine word I've ever heard in my life. Like, what is this? He tells me about it, and I'm like, all right, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I went home that night and I signed up for a meet. Like I literally
I love that.
I got home from school. I said, "Hey, Mom and Dad, I think I found a sport I want to try." And they're like, "Okay." So I Googled powerlifting meets near me, and any powerlifters listening and that know me, like I signed up for a USAPL meet, which is a very foreign thing for me to say now because I've much went past that.
Yeah.
But I signed up for a meet. I think I was like 10 weeks out, and I did it, and I had like the second I got my first squat pass. I was like, I want to do this every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was like, I want to. If I could, I would compete every night. Like this is so much fun. And I was hooked. So yeah, but getting into multi-ply was a little bit of a different process, right? So I've gotten into powerlifting now, and I'm like, I love this.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it, and I didn't know like what any kind of long-term goals were, but I was like, I just want to keep doing it.
Sure,
so I went to you remember Warhouse Gym?
Yeah. Oh,
which was
a
a cool spot in PA for a while.
Yeah.
I did the Warhouse. I did a meet in East Stroudsburg, USAPL. Then I did the USAPL Warhouse meet, and that qualified me for Raw Nationals. Went to Raw Nationals, and at that point, I was pretty disenfranchised with the USAPL. I was like not competing in the USAPL or IPF circuit
Everyone
anymore.
always says that.
Yeah,
I hear that all the time.
Just the stringentness and how much it feels like they fight you from lifting more weight, right? Like.
Yep.
Using all power bars, not letting you tuck your feet or lift your head on bench. And it's like, I thought the point of this sport was to lift more weight. Why are we trying to take away easy ways to do that?
Even the whole fat pad thing, too.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole, it gets me all torqued up. But by that point, I'm done with the USAPL. By this point, about senior year of high school, actually a little before that. Sorry, I should go back.
You're good.
Junior year of high school, I'm prepping for Raw Nationals at this point. And Westside versus the World comes out, and I was like, "This is a powerlifting documentary. This is super cool." I kind of knew what Westside was, and you are wearing a Westside shirt. But when that came out, I had a hernia at the time, and I had surgery on it, so I was out for like 2 weeks. And before the movie had come out, I had bought the book of methods, but I hadn't had time to read it. And then I was like, "Okay, well, I've got 2 weeks to do nothing," and I saw Westside versus the World, and I was like, I have Book of Methods. I got to start reading this.
Yeah.
I think I read it like 10 times in the 2 weeks that I was, and that started me training conjugate. But the kind of consequence of that was Westside versus the World exposed me to what gear was, because I didn't know what it was before, like briefs and squat suits and bench shirts. Like I didn't like I looked at Inzer's website before because I had an Inzer belt, but I didn't understand like how you competed with it or how it worked.
Yeah.
That kind of introduced me.
That's kind of how I am a lot of the time. I just don't know how to compete with it.
Yeah, I can explain it to you if you want. But going through, like, that exposed me to it. But I was in high school. I didn't have the money. Gear's really expensive, if you don't know. And I arguably still can't afford it at times. But you make it work. The community helps you a lot.
Yeah.
Then, I'm training conjugate, but I'm still lifting raw. I get to senior year of high school. I've done Raw Nationals. I've kind of jumped ship to the USPA. Then COVID hits, right? And the world shut down. The gym is shut down, which sucked. I'm training in my basement, lifting buckets of rocks and using all the bands I have and trying not to strangle myself with them.
Yeah.
And then I start door dashing. And
I remember those days.
over COVID, that was a cash cow.
Yes.
And the first thing I thought was, I could buy a pair of briefs with this money. Because, like, I had extra cash laying around because DoorDash was making you so much money doing that. And then I bought briefs, and I was like, I squatted them once, and I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like, this is awesome. Then I got a bench shirt, and that rocked my world. I was like, this is incredible. Like, I love it. And then I finally got a squat suit, and it just snowballed from there. I did a meet. I met the people at Death Wish Barbell. I found a crew, which was incredible, like a proper crew. I went to college. I was able to start training with them full time, and it just went from there. And now I'm here.
Dude, that is a really good story, and I love that. And what's nice is that whole DoorDash thing too. That was the same way. I'm like, nah, I have money for meets.
That was the gateway for me to afford gear, right? Because like,
dude, they're expensive.
Dude, I don't know if you know this. The gear I bought from Inzer, like, briefs were $150.
Yeah.
Bench shirt was $300.
I think they're at $200 now.
Probably.
Yeah.
Which is funny because Preds got even worse since I bought them.
Really?
Yeah. Don't buy new gear from Inzer. And an LUP, a Leviathan Ultra Pro, the lace-up squat suit is like $400. So to a high schooler who, at the time, his job got shut down and he was door dashing, It's a lot of fucking money. But before that, especially when I was working part-time at Home Goods and my schedule was, did not allow me to work as much because I was in class, like that was impossible. That was a pipe dream.
Yeah.
And usually, to give credit where it's due to the multi-ply community, because it's very tight-knit, a lot of people will give you free gear, right?
Okay.
Used gear, which, by the way, if you're looking to get into multi-ply, used gear is far and away the best gear because breaking in new gear sucks.
Yeah.
It's tough. It does not want to work with you.
The bites.
Well, the bites, they never stop. But the thing with being a beginner is you don't know what you like yet, different cuts of gear, and it's a very big investment to like not know if something's going to work for you, right?
So does that happen often?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah, and it changes with your weight, right? So, like my brief situation, my squat briefs, I had a pair of Titan Super Boss squat briefs, and they were tanks. I actually just sent them to a buddy of mine down in Virginia, Paul Stein. He's getting some use out of them. But the legs were really short, and that didn't work well for me, right? And once I went from 181 to 198, I could no longer get them all the way up into my crotch, and they would fold in a weird way, and I couldn't sit back as hard anymore.
Shit.
Well, that screwed my squat over. So not only did, I had these briefs that were expensive and custom made and really strong. They kind of didn't work for a while, but I was able to get some use out of them. Then I gained weight and everything changed. Well, guess what? That's $250 down the drain, right? That's $250 spent on a piece of custom made gear for you that takes months to get in.
Who did those briefs again?
Titan.
Titan.
And that's not to knock Titan's gear. It's just not a cut that works for me based on the length of my femurs and how they are. I like a bit of a longer leg in my brief, get more support in the hamstring. But that's one of those things that you don't know until you get into gear and you start to understand that.
Yeah.
So you can quickly see how if you're buying new gear left and right, that's thousands of dollars down the drain on trying to find a pair of briefs that works for you.
Yo, I never thought about that.
Yeah. However, far and away the best thing you can do if you're trying to get into gear is go on Facebook Marketplace. There's people who,
that's smart. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, not only selling used gear for much cheaper, even though gear holds its value pretty well if you don't destroy it.
Unless it's from metal.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that on the podcast anymore.
Listen, man, it's unadulterated, but
listen, Ano is
quickest way to get canceled.
He's a pretty racist guy, apparently. I didn't follow Finnish politics too closely before 2020, but apparently he's a bit of a hot button topic over there.
Same thing happened with CrossFit too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
CrossFit. Yeah.
Oh, he lost his whole thing. But listen, I don't want to sidetrack you.
No, you.
But go ahead. But I just thought it was funny. Like it holds its value. And I was like, I remember when metal was like.
So when the metal thing happened, people could not give that gear away. Like.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of people who were like, I'm new to gear. I don't know if I'm going to compete in it yet. Just give it to me, and I'll spray paint over the logo. Like and in most federations, like the good feds at least understand that this is expensive and it's an investment, and they were pretty much just like, listen, don't buy new metal gear, but if you have metal gear and you want to compete in it, just tape over the logo, something like that, right? Because again, like you're still looking at a $450 squat suit, and if you just if you bought a $450 metal canvas squat suit and Ano tweets that, first of all, you didn't say anything. You had no idea. Or if you have no idea, if you don't keep up with Finnish politics in the United States, which is not outlandish to assume, you don't know, and to hold you accountable for that's a little unfair.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I just thought it was funny because
it was really funny.
I saw all these like tweets and posts, and like Jim Fail Army's like, dang, imagine having $1,000 suit that you can no longer wear. Or it was like a picture of this like little kid with like an edited like metal squat suit holding it up for Christmas, and he goes, "Oh, honey, you can't wear that anymore." Damn, $1,000 on the drain. I just thought it was yeah.
But that happened, man, and that was Elite FTS used to be the American distributor for metal, and the second that tweet hit, Dave Tate was like, "We've dropped metal from our website. All outstanding orders will be refunded." And that tanked metal. Like they're, as far as I know, they're like on life support as a company.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's hard, especially when like you have all these federations not allowing them, so obviously people aren't going to buy them because they want to at least get their way lights.
Yeah, that powerlifting fed drama, man. That's a whole other can of worms.
What do you mean? Well, I know
so many of them.
Well, there was this thing, and I don't know. You'll know way more than I would. And this is only what I hear from like Twitter, or like Instagram or TikTok. It's like because there's so many federations, and then there was this video that came out with this young woman, and I'm sure you've seen it. She's benched, she's arched all the way up,
yeah,
and she
very short bench,
and people were like, well, RPS wouldn't allow this, or USPL, or and then like the feds are like changing it up and all this kind of stuff, and there was all this drama between everything.
Yeah, so that's in the USAPL and IPF, even though they're not really one and the same anymore. Actually, let me go back on that. In Powerlifting America and the IPF, now they instated a rule to kind of combat people with really high bench arches.
I saw
and, like,
that.
wide bench strokes. That I believe it's that your elbow has to get to at least 90 degrees from the perspective of the head judge.
Yeah,
and it just kind of comes back to what I said earlier. Like, this sport's about lifting more weight. Like, why are we fighting lifters who are maximizing their leverage just to lift more weight?
Yeah.
Because guess what? Like, if you're going to make that a rule, what do you say to all the sumo deadlifters who have like a 3-inch pull because they have, super long orangutan arms? Like, again, they're playing to their strengths.
Yeah.
So I think that's fair. Honestly, it's within the realms of the rules, and they went and changed the rules. So
well, see, that's the one thing is like people always will say that, like, because we're not allowed to pull sumo.
Yeah.
So like I've seen people get no list because they're like, no, you have to do it again, get a pull conventional. But then to your point, it's like you should be able to use your leverages. So like for me, I'm going to have 2 belts. I'm gonna have my soft belt, my regular belt, and I'm gonna have figure 8s on.
Yeah.
So
it's awesome.
So like if I have to pull an 800 pull, like my fingers might just barely be on the bar.
Yeah.
And I get that. So like, and then if you have like if I'm overhead pressing, like I'm gonna have my wrist straps on. I'm gonna have my elbow sleeves on, and all that stuff. And like, so I get that. So that's why I can't give people too much crap, because if they are in like an RPS meet, I'll just use them for like just shits and giggles. If they're in an RPS meet and they're pulling 3 inches, if they're allowed to do it, they're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
So I get that.
I think it was Dan Green quote. I could quote him where he said, the greatest lifters will best use all of their advantages.
Yeah.
So like, if you've got long arms and you can get your toes out to the bar and pull, a 2-inch deadlift with 1,000 pounds, all power to you. On the same token, if you've got like, a 5-inch bench stroke and you're going to put on a 4-ply shirt and bench $1,000, all power to you. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, because at the end of the day, powerlifting, despite what some people will try and tell you, it's not about who's the strongest. It's about who can lift the most weight in 3 specific tests.
Yeah.
Right. And, how much that has to do with strength is really debatable, because how practical is something like the bench press, right? And again, like if you wanted to see who was the strongest, you could just kind of have everyone push on a force plate or grab a dynamometer, and you could test strength from
without a doubt,
highly specific stance. So I think when you kind of go into a lot of these feds that are restricting things like deadlift bars or certain styles of benching, like, why are you fighting heavier weights being lifted if that's the whole point of the sport, right?
Well, that's what bothered me with the whole fat pad thing.
Yeah.
I was like, why would you have them do this if this is going to allow them to have more weight and it be safer for them too?
Yeah.
That blew my mind.
So the only argument against the fat pad, and this is honestly fair, is smaller lifters cannot touch on them, right? Like, we have
I didn't think about
like a
that.
female lifter in our crew who she can't touch on a fat pad because her arms will literally hit the pad. Like, her shoulders are that narrow.
Think about that. Okay, yeah.
But I think, again, like, I mean, you've already seen the USPA do it, where they have, I think it's like, they used to, at least, it was like up to the 181s would use a power bar to squat, and then 181 and over would use a squat bar to squat. Like, if you could have something like that, especially with a combo rack where the bench just drops in, right? Or, even some of these benches now have quick change pads and stuff like that. I think it's fair, and honestly, it's kind of a disservice to larger lifters, because glenohumeral overhang, like your shoulders hanging over the pad, is not good, right?
No,
you want a stable and a large surface to have your upper back seated on. And again, one of those things, like, everyone's like, well, you can bench more weight on a fat pad, and it's like, that's kind of the fucking point, dude.
It's literally the whole point of powerlifting is to bench the most weight.
Like, that's I always argue with someone like my raw lifting friends who compete in like the USAPL, or they used to compete in USPA or whatever, and they lift on like a combo rack pad and they won't train on a fat pad because they're like, it's not comp specific. And I'm like, well, you just put more mileage on your shoulders. And they're like, yeah, but it's unrealistic because I can bench more on a fat pad. And it's like 2 things. Like, 1, that's the point of powerlifting. But 2, like, there are feds that let you compete on one. Why don't you compete in one of them? And then they have another whole argument about that.
Well, I get the same thing with people who are like, who do like RPS or whatever. It's like, if they're not using like a deadlift bar, they're like, why don't you just pull like a straight bar or grab the axle bar? And I'm like, well, I know, 1, that I'm going to be pulling on a Texas deadlift bar?
Yeah.
And 2, why would I make it harder for myself?
Yeah.
Like if I don't get a text from Andrew or whatever it is, or Zach, for crying out loud, that is like, you're pulling from a straight bar today.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but like, I'm pulling the true weight and I'm not bending the bar. And I'm like, okay, I want you to find, I want you to tell me what 700 pounds feels like on an axle bar.
Yeah.
Because it is not,
sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. Like you get no help. It is an unforgiving bar.
I think it's interesting, right? Because people like to talk about, first of all, what isn't a real sport, but powerlifting's often thrown in that mix, right? Where it's like, we're a sport, and it's like, well, every other fucking sport evolves over time. Like, the football helmets today are not the same ones from 1987.
No.
Why the fuck are you insisting that you squat on a power bar from 1987? Like, now, granted, like, even the power bars have gotten better, but in my eyes, if there's a better way to do it, why aren't you doing it? Especially if it's going to increase, safety. Like,
I was just gonna say, and safety, yeah.
The like squat bars are a pretty hot button topic too, right? Where like the Texas squat bar, that like thinner, whippier one, even though it's wider, like that's a 55-pound bar, and I think the USPA uses that, and I think the WRPF for the most part uses a 55-pound squat bar as well. Well, like there are 65-pound squat bars.
We have the 65 one.
That's a 60-pound mastodon bar. That thing's awesome.
Dude, I love that. Well, because NAS started using those now too.
That's incredible. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
But like again, like if there's a better way, you should do it. Especially because less whip and a wider bar will do 2 things. 1, it increases safety because there's less whip. It makes the squat a bit more stable. And 2, it being wider allows lifters with shoulder mobility issues to get their hands out wider.
I was just gonna say, I was like, so like, so we had an event where it was a Texas squat bar. I don't know the full name of the 65 or the 60-pound one, but you had to come to platform. That's the 2 designated height. So I'm like 5'11", so I forget the height exactly what it was. And you have to touch and then come up rep 1. You've seen it on World's Strongest Man, but this is just So, it was one of those things where I was like, I really hope it's not a power bar, because like if I use a duffalo bar, like I still have marks because I have to go wider, and it curved around, but I will like clip my hands.
Yeah.
But it's nice because I can go out as wide as I want. I could rest it up on my lats.
And like, if you don't mind me asking, like, how much are you weighing now?
I'm like 318 right now.
Yeah. So you're like a big guy, like, and to expect a 318-pound man to cram himself inside the confines of a power bar that like a 148-pound female is using too, like, you kind of gotta look at 2 lifters and be like, there's a difference here. We should probably try to accommodate that as best we can, right? Well,
that's the whole thing with the fat pad, and that's what bothered me. I'm like, why are you not allowing? Because I feel like it's more safety.
It is.
You know what I'm saying?
And there are feds that are using it now. Like I believe in the IPA, Jimmy Kolb fought for the Thompson fat pad to be the comp standard. So that's
wild.
Awesome. He's incredible.
The fact that you get to lift with that is one. Okay, this is gonna sound really stupid. I am so jealous that you get to be in the same room as him, because it's so cool. That's got. So what is that like?
Jimmy is the nicest guy. It's hard to explain. And to be fair, like I do this too. Like in your head, when you see some of these bigger lifters, especially people who aren't big social media people, like Dave Hoff, you kind of create this like cult of personality image in your head, like this larger than life persona.
That's how it was that man.
Yeah, Jimmy is the nicest guy. He's super cool. He's super nice to talk to. He will talk to anyone. He's at our meets all the time. He's come down and trained with us a few times. He's from Virginia, so it's not too far of a hike for him. I have a great relationship with him. I won his scholarship last year, the Kolb Strong Scholarship. That really helped me out because at the time I was working an unpaid internship, and to get that, that was the money that got me a new bench shirt. That was what got me to 600 pounds in a meet. So like things like that wouldn't have been possible without him at the end of the day. And he's a wealth of knowledge. Obviously, he's hands down the greatest bench presser of all time.
Yeah, without a doubt.
No contest. I really don't think there's ever been anyone who's been so far ahead of the rest of the sport. Like, to put it into perspective, he benched 1120 in a single ply poly shirt, which I think the next highest single ply bench was like 1,003 from Blaine Sumner, and the next highest multi-ply bench was, I believe officially it was like 1075 or 1080. It was either Kennelly or Mendelson, and he benched 1120. And there was arguably an 1100 bench by Tiny Meeker down at York, but it was like kind of like it was like an expo, it wasn't a meet, and some people say he didn't lock out, whatever. But for all intents and purposes, regardless, Jimmy beat the multi-ply record in a single ply shirt, which is insane. Yeah, and at the time, that was beating like band shirt numbers, which are like that new category of unlimited shirt. And then
I'm not familiar.
They're essentially a bench shirt made out of like a stretchy knee wrap material.
Oh, okay.
But that's like a new category of extreme benching.
Yeah,
and
I'm not familiar with all that.
For a while, he was, he didn't really like them. He didn't really understand them. He was like, I thought the rules said no rubber, and these have rubber in them. That was kind of where he drew the line. And he was out benching everyone using one anyway.
Yeah.
And then I forget who it was, but someone either got close or like chipped his 1120, and he was just kind of like, I'm going to give these a serious shot now. And then he benched 1320. So.
Holy shit!
And now he's raised the bar to 1350. So I'll tell you, the 13, I believe it was 1320. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But the day he broke that, I was there actually. So
I watched the video.
Yeah, so that was at a York meet. Ralph had brought me up there. He was like, "Hey, Jimmy's gonna bench today. I think you should come with me," because he knew I won the scholarship, but he wanted it to be a surprise. So Jimmy Kolb and Amber Hansen were there, and they told me that I won, and Kate Kolb was there too, and it was super cool. Well, then Jimmy goes out and benches. He opened with, I think it was 1240 or 1250, which, by the way, was the heaviest bench in history at that point. So he goes out there, he opens with over 1200. Then he comes back to the stands, and we're talking to him, and he's talking to Kate, and he's like, "What do you think I should do?" Because he smoked it, and she goes, "Let's go for it." And he said, "All right." And they sent 1320 to the board, and then he took 1320, smoked it, scratched his third, and the energy in that room was unreal. To like, have you ever seen a 1,000-pound bench in person?
No, I've never seen it in person.
I mean, they're becoming more commonplace now, but there's a different energy in the room when 1,000 pounds is loaded on a bench bar, because you're like, this could decapitate somebody, and to put 1320 on that bar, it was unreal.
I can't even because I've had 480 in my hands, and
Yeah.
my I feel the weight.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I can't imagine it being that's more than triple.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Like,
that's
even me, like I'm benching over 600 now in a shirt, and that's not even half of what he's, and it's like, you're telling me there's dudes out here doing more than double that? It's unreal. But seriously, he's the nicest guy. He's super cool.
that's what I've heard.
He is jacked as anything. I don't think I've ever seen a wider human being. That dude is, honest to God, 2 barn doors wide. It's so impressive.
Yeah.
But it goes to show you, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Right. So how far are you willing to go if you say that you want to do that?
That's
and he's
wild.
going the distance. And
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I always see his videos, and it's wild to me, because it's like, who's Magnus? Who's the one? I can't remember his name. He has this wicked bench. He's somewhere in the sevens. It's raw.
Julius Maddox.
Yeah. Julius Maddox.
Another
Why did I
great
say
bencher.
Magnus?
Yeah.
I guess Magnus for Magnus. That's
strongman.
Yeah. Sorry. But yeah, Julius Maddox. He's wicked, but it's I see him doing the raw, and but then the next couple scrolls, it's him doing 1300. I'm like, what is it's wild to me.
So here's the thing about the raw benching, right? Because if you go to any of Jimmy's videos, there's 100 comments of people who don't really know anything about gear, and they're like, "Well, what's your raw bench? What's your raw bench?" And he's too modest to say that he'd fucking smoke anyone, but I'll say it for him. I have handled him at a few meets. The speed at which he moves 600 pounds raw in the warm-up room, I've never seen before.
No, I've watched his I think it was on TikTok or something like that. I think he had 600 reverse grip.
Yeah.
And he was just,
it's
I'm what the fuck?
It's like a shotgun blast.
Yeah.
So when the most recent time he came to Death Wish Barbell to bench with us, God, it was a while ago now. It was definitely over a year, might have been 2. But he's warming up, and at the time he was trying to break in, I think, a multi-ply katana shirt, and he's warming up, and we got 6 plates on the bar, which on the bench bar is 595, and he almost threw it out of his hands, and I seriously cannot describe how fast inhuman weights move, even raw with him. And then one of the craziest things, you'll get a kick out of this. Have you ever heard how he warms up to bench over 11 or 12 on the platform?
No.
So he, someone had told him at one point, they're like, the gear doesn't need to get warm like a muscle. If your muscles are warm, you can just kind of do whatever you want in the gear. So the first time that I ever handled him at a meet, he was at Attilas Belmar when they were still hosting RPS meets.
Oh, nice.
I believe he benched 1080 single ply, which at the time was a record, which is still a huge bench. It was either 1050 or 1080, something like that. But get this. So he warms up in the warm-up room, 1 plate, 2 plate, 3 plate, 4 plate, 5 plate, 6 plate, raw, reverse grip, just throwing weights. Racks it. He puts on his shirt. He takes out 700 something. And the shirt's so tight, he can only move it like this much.
Yeah.
He's floating 700. And then he goes, all right, I'm going to go out there and take my opener. So he made a 380-pound jump. And he was just like, well, I'm warm, and I got my shirt on. So he took those reps of 700 to kind of like jam the shirt back into his armpits a little more, set it better. And he was just like, I'm going to go take it. And he does the same thing now. Like he'll warm up to like 700 or 800, then he goes right out and jumps to 12 or 13.
Dude, that's...
So imagine putting like 135 on the bar, doing like a set of 15, and then being like, I'm going to take 4 1/4. Like, obviously there's gear involved, so it's a little different.
No, I get that, but that's wild
unreal,
to
dude.
me. Like if I'm squatting, it's like, all right, well, 605 felt fine.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm gonna jump to 11.
I'm gonna jump to 11. Like a 50-pound jump for me is scary.
Yeah, dude. Like,
because all I have on is knee sleeves, you know.
And I bench in a shirt, so like I'll tell you like straight up, if I went like 1 plate, 2 plate, throwing it around, and then went to like 6 or 7, I'd probably shit myself and drop the bar on my face. Like, I could not do that. The amount of confidence that takes. He's the greatest bench presser of all time. Yeah. There's no question about it in my mind. There's even, like you can make a good argument for people like Ryan Kennelly or Scott Mendelson because they were really big benchers in their day. Like Scott Mendelson was a huge pioneer, especially coming up through denim. Same with Sean Latimer, really great denim bencher. There's a great argument for Scott Mendelson in that he's the only lifter to ever hold the equipped and raw world record at the same time. He benched like 10-something in a shirt and then 7-something raw, and he held the highest bench in both categories at the same time, which was insane. Like that's pretty crazy, but he was never hundreds of pounds ahead of the next nearest bencher. Yeah. Like there's Jimmy Kolb, he benched 1350 recently, that's the new record, and then the next highest is like 1140. So he's like over 200 pounds past the rest of the sport. There is no one like him, and I don't know if there will ever be anyone like him that'll be that great.
Holy shit. It's hard to wrap my head around it because it's like I look at it as like he holds my deadlift more than hundreds of pounds more than my deadlift in his arms. Like you go, he was throwing 600 pounds. I'm like, some days I wake up with 600 pounds in my arms. Like,
oh my god, dude, yeah, it's
and
heavy.
It's like 8 in the morning, and I gotta pull it. I'm like in my 5th round. I'm like, dude, I'm tired, and he's just yoinking it.
Yeah, and one of the craziest things he does is he what a slingshot is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so there's a stronger version of that Rob Farrell makes called the Widowmaker, and that's the guy who makes the F8 band shirts, and he puts on a Widowmaker and he'll do like 1,000 for 20.
Oh, I've seen them.
It's like, unreal.
They look like cuffs. And
it's like a bench band, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen them use
but it's like, dude, I've used one of those, and first of all, I can never get them to work. Like, I just eat shit with them constantly. Like, I'm not good with them. I don't know why. My raw bench is not that bad, and my shirt bench is pretty good.
What's your raw bench now?
I'm creeping towards 4 raw, which will be cool for me because that'll be the first time I've had like a 2x body weight raw bench because I weigh about 200.
Damn. God, you're gonna catch
I took
to me, bro.
395 off a 1-board raw not too long ago, and I took 415 off a 2-board raw just Tuesday, and neither of them were that hard. Yeah. So I'm pretty confident I could get close to 4 raw soon. It's just kind of like a side quest for me while I'm waiting on a new bench shirt to come in.
Dude, I'm causing your side quest before you get to the boss. So one of the things that I was always curious about was. Now I saw with like Pete Grahowski. I hope I pronounce his last name.
Great guy.
Pronounce his last name right. He's an amazing guy. Fucking love him.
Incredible bencher too.
Why do you guys cut the back of your shirts? I think I asked this before. But
okay.
I noticed like people will get the shirts and I've seen what they look like.
Yeah.
And then like 3 weeks later, I see the same dude. And he's because Pete does it too. He's got like grocery bags from like Redner's in his thing, and his back is wide open, and they're just like, all right, bro. And then he's this bar hand over, and I'm like, what? Like, so why do you?
So Pete's another great guy, really humble. Pete was a great mentor for me for years when I was first getting into shirts and I was still lifting at Gym and Tan. He helped me a ton. I still will say to this day, he's the only reason I ever touched my Evil Twin bench shirt because he knows Titan shirts so well. Now he's in single ply, so he wears a closed back shirt. The grocery bags. So they're really thin and they slide over each other. That helps you get the shirt over your skin. So some people will put baby powder on their arms. I have what's called suit slickers. It's almost like, like girls like yoga pants or leggings.
Yeah.
It's like a yoga pant that slides over your arm so you can get the shirt up if it's tight.
I got you.
Because it doesn't want to move over your skin very well.
Yeah.
Now the open back, that's something that came about in multi-ply. It does a few things. One, it makes a shirt easier to get into because if you have a closed back, you kind of have to like hockey jersey it. And if you're not familiar with a bench shirt, it's very stiff. It's very hard to get into. It does not stretch very much. So especially when they're made out of like canvas and denim, really hard. And sometimes people would have to cut you out of them. The open back makes it so you can just put your arms in and pull it into you. Now, the other thing the open back does is because the shirt's no longer like a closed circuit, you can move each side independently and you can set it differently and the back won't contort it. So one of the big things that did back in the day was it allowed people to start benching off the collar instead of the chest plate because you could pull the collar lower. That was a big thing. I believe Metal Militia was the one who started cutting the backs of their shirts open and benching off the collar. Back in the day with Bill Crawford.
Dude, I'm learning so much right now.
Yeah, I think the history of gear is fascinating. I think there's a lot of cool stuff to it, and like the little things you can do to it to get more out of it. Like Pete told me something that stuck with me once, and he said, the greatest leaps and bounds you will make in your shirt come not from getting stronger, but understanding the shirt better and getting better with technique. So learning how to set the shirt differently, learning like in Titan shirts, like twisting the sleeves to pull the chest plate different ways, and Inzer shirts pulling the collar down, and like ruffling the sleeves and stuff like that. So those little things really matter.
Yeah.
And, if you're someone who doesn't like a lot of variables, then gear's probably not for you.
Yeah.
But if you like to tinker and like play with things, then there's a lot you can do in gear to get a lot out of it.
Fuck.
Like you'll never in a raw meet, have someone be like, hey, why don't you like tuck your elbows a little bit more and hit a 50-pound PR?
Yeah.
But if you show up to a meet and someone's like, like, hey, I know this shirt really well. Why don't you try doing this? You can hit a 50 or 100-pound PR that day. So like 2-3 years ago at Christmas Carnage, I was about to bomb out for the second time because
no.
Not only did I miss my first 2 squats and only get it on the third, although that was less my fault and more like setting in the wrong monolift height and the RPS monolifts being weird. I got missed a squat, hit a squat. I'm in the meet. Good, right? It was not the squat I wanted to hit.
Yeah.
It sucked. Then I get up to bench. This is my bread and butter. Missed a bench. About to go for my third bench. Well, Sean Latimer's there, and he, great denim bencher. He was known as a denim destroyer, but, he benched over 9. He also was part of the development process for the Inzer Super Duper Phenom, which was the shirt that I was wearing.
Oh, great.
And
so you have to hit this.
He comes up to me, he said, he's like, so what's going on out there? And I said, like, I feel like I need more tricep. And he's like, oh, well, you build that in the gym. And I was like, no, but like more tricep support in the shirt. And he goes, all right, come here, put your arms out. And he grabs the seam that's kind of cut over the sleeve and just drags it down to like the lower head of my tricep. And I feel the line that I was trying to explain to my handler to set. And I'm like, okay, this is exactly what I needed. Yeah. And then I went out there and I smoked it. I smoked like it was a warm up.
So that's an incredible story because you just saw the person who helped develop the shirt.
Yeah.
And not only did he was like, yo, what's going on? Instantly fix it. Like that's like
there's little things like that happen, right? And I think bench shirts are a great example of that. Like the bench and gear is such a highly complex lift.
Yeah.
Even raw, it's a really complex movement because there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But when you throw the shirt on over top of it, and especially when you go into different shirts fitting differently, different shirts being cut different, like benching off of different parts of shirts, like the chest plate versus the collar, like there's just so much you can go into, and you can really manipulate it to how you are as a lifter.
Shit. It's just, this is so wild to me because I remember there was a point where I was like, I'm getting smoked out. Like I'm talking like I hit a 725 on a deadlift, and the next I'm watching him like getting hung up on the back of like the meat facility, and he's like dangling there, getting into a deadlift suit, and then pulls
you guys
like
wear a lot of gear in strongman.
Yeah, and they pull like 950, and I'm like, And then what? Now I have to make up all my points in
Yeah.
like a pressing event or like a moving event.
It's pretty funny. The deadlift suit, there's a very classic, like, God, I've done this more times than I can count. And every time I look back, I'm like, I'm such an idiot. But it's a very classic case of like a deadlift moves well. And then you're like, give me more strap. And you're like, I'm gonna crank my straps tighter and I'm gonna pull like a 50-pound PR. Then you get out there and by the time you get to the bar, your spine's bent like a cashew and you can't get it off the floor.
Yep.
Like it happens all the time. So it's one of those, you have to be strong enough to use the gear that you're in and how you're setting it, right?
Oh God. So what is it like getting into a deadlift suit?
It's awful, dude. It's terrible. Deadlift suits hurt. They suck. They crunch your junk up pretty bad, especially when you crank the straps. Have you ever been in one?
No. I thought about getting one.
You should.
I've thought about it. I'm in the same boat. Do I want to spend $500-$600 on a
deadlift suits? Aren't that expensive? They're cheaper.
I never looked into them, but
I mean, you can go on Facebook Marketplace, dude, because lot of big powerlifters out there. There are a lot of super heavyweights too, so you will have no shortage of gear to find.
That's true. It's weird because a lot of the guys that I compete with or train with or whatever, they don't use suits.
Yeah.
I know Scott, like people do. I just like, it's one of those things where they always tell me like reach your peak, and then if you need this, do this. But I also I don't know if I want to like. Well, I don't know if I want to just have it just like, because I would my balls, my leg.
Yeah, here's what I'm gonna tell you. It hurts. It's a lot of pressure, but the thing that you have to realize with gear is it doesn't make you strong. It makes you stronger, right? Mm-hmm. So, but again, it's a skill thing, right? You have to be strong enough to use that equipment. You have to be able to manipulate that equipment, and that takes practice, and it's gonna take you a long time to learn.
That's what you said.
So.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say like get a deadlift suit and throw one on and just put it on a plate on the bar, but like they're worth looking into, and especially if you're allowed to use one, why would you set yourself a step back from the rest of the competition, right?
Yeah.
Like, but also like a lot of people, especially in gear, they pull more raw than they do in a deadlift suit, so that's something to consider too.
Yeah,
and that's another terrifying thing with that investment is you could get it and you could pull less than you pull raw. How much does that suck, dude? Because now you've crushed your junk. And you've blown out all the blood vessels in your face just to pull a plate and a half less than what you could pull raw because you can't get in a position.
Oh, great! Now I'm worried. That's just what I need to. Oh, because USS Nats are. See now, because I watch all these guys, and I'm like, all right, well I see 1, I see 2, I see 3, I see 4, and I'm like, I know. It sounds so dumb, and everyone gives me crap for it, but I just know it's like one event because like. Climbing up to an 800 raw deadlift, it just seems so far.
It's tough. Yeah. And I know exactly what you're thinking too, and like what everyone thinks is like I put this thing on and I bench like 300 pounds more than I bench raw, right? And it's like, well, it's not that easy. And like unfortunately, if it was that easy, like everyone would probably do it because it's fun. But like. I think Anthony Oliveira talked about it, how like, he picked up on equipped squatting really quick, but he put on a bench shirt and he was like nearly killing himself to bench like 50 pounds less than he benched raw. And he was just like, I couldn't do anything. Like, and it takes a long time to learn. It's hard. And nobody wants to say that though.
Dude, I don't, it's so freaky because all I want to do is just to go to a meet and not have to like look at it and be like, okay, well if we're doing Ukrainian deadlift, I know I can like be able to like take the top 3 or whatever it is. And I'm sure it's the same way with you. You look at the people that you have in your brackets and you're like, well, I know this guy's gonna pull in 9s. I know this guy's gonna bench in 6s.
Yeah.
So do you ever do that? Do you ever like look at the people in your bracket and you're like, all right, well, this is how I'm gonna plan out my pushes, my pulls.
I mean, I would if I like had competition at my meets. Like the unfortunate thing is, I wouldn't say multi-ply is a dying breed, but it just like never really grew. Like there's just not that many multi-ply lifters out there. Yeah. So when you go into a local meet and I'm competing, open 198 multi-ply, drug tested, like there's nobody else doing that. Like it's just me in my division. So, but even if there was, like I'm not necessarily worried about winning the meet. Like I view open powerlifting as the great equalizer because powerlifting is a consistent and numerical sport. It's very easy to be like this guy benches more than this guy, and this guy benches more than him. Like it's easy to see that, and I can look at open powerlifting and I can see exactly where I stack up against all of multi-ply history, and I look at those numbers and I say, okay, I want to be at the top of this list someday. So what are the steps I need to take to get there, right?
That's good. Not many people think like that either.
I just think, a lot of people try to overcomplicate it. And it's like, like I'm looking at the 198 record board. The all-time world record's like 900 from Jason Coker, which I'm nowhere close to. But I'm like, okay, well, I'm still in a poly shirt. What am I trying to get to? Well, I think like 660 will get me to the top 100, and like 720 will get me to top 50. So it's like, these are ways I can start to climb the leaderboard. Now, obviously, you have to train to get to those places. But when you start to break it down like that, it's like, okay, well, I benched 610 at my last meet, and my shirt's starting to wear out, but I'm getting a new shirt. So my raw bench has gotten a lot stronger. Hopefully that can push me to a higher number. And now you're like, okay, I see how it's laid out, how I can get to these higher numbers, right? And you start to understand, like, this is what my two board's going to have to look like. This is what my floor press is going to have to look like. This is what these numbers are going to have to get to. And once I realize that web has formed of strength, I'm primed to hit this number, right?
Dude, your brain processes about this is just, it's beautiful. And like, I don't think you know this, like a lot of kids your age, I mean, even my age, especially me too, don't always think like that. I'm just always looking at the big picture, not breaking everything down. And Andrew's giving me so much shit about that plenty of times.
Yeah.
But it and that's one of the reasons I want to have you on too, is there's so many things people can learn from you. Like, even me. I'm a raging idiot. I am. That's what I say. Like people, like I'll show you my DMs. People are like, oh, how do I do this? And I'm like, I'm the wrong person to ask.
I don't fucking know.
I don't know shit. Roman, how do you use our legs? I basically just Larson press with my feet planted to the floor. That's all. That's really what it is. And then, but so that's Don't worry, that won't.
No, you're good.
Yeah. But yeah, so
I mean, it's
awesome.
I don't know. I quickly got like fascinated by it, and I started reading more about it. Yeah. But like, I don't know, the two biggest pieces of advice I can give anyone is read about it, because there are books about it.
Yeah.
And the recommendations I would have is mostly Russian literature or West Side stuff. That's just the flavor of the sport that, brought me more success and that I like.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, like, talk to people who are better than you. Surround yourself with people who are better than you. You look at my crew. I'm easily the weakest guy in that gym, and that's the way I want it, right?
Yeah. You and I talked about that like a while ago.
If you're the strongest person in your crew or in your gym, you need to find a new crew or a new gym, because you're not going to grow there.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
But you got to understand like the hierarchy too, right? Like you got to know your fucking place.
Yeah.
Now like I guess we got into a point where like I'm starting to be able to give some more input. I've been around long enough of our crew where like I'm starting to see what I know, when to tell certain people this or that. So that's good. But it all comes with time. You learn, right? But I do understand like it's very intimidating to join a crew or join a group of people, especially when they're all stronger than you and they don't know you anything, right?
Oh, see, I love that. I love people who are stronger than me, because
you need competition. Right?
That's what I feed off of.
Yeah.
Like that's why I loved strongman, because like I have like, because it sounds so meatheadish, but it's like I see like a bigger guy in the gym, like I wonder what he's benching, and like it happened the one day. The guy was so cool, but we're benching, and then like I see like, all right, I'm at like 365, and I'm like, all right, he did it for 3-2. All right,
yeah.
What's my jump now?
Here's another concept that I think is important to that is humanizing big weights.
Yeah.
Right. Like when I was first getting into gear, like a 700 squat was like a long-term goal for me. Well, I came to Death Wish, and I beat that pretty quick. But part of that
you did what? You did
770 at my last. It was high.
Oh yeah,
it was high.
It was high. Listen, they counted it, so I'll count it.
Yeah, listen, it's rude to not accept a gift in most cultures, so I'll take it. Right?
Never prize horse in the mouth, gift horse in the mouth. What
something
is
like that? Yeah. Listen, I'll squat more deeper. It's not the last meet I'm gonna do. I'll clean it up. But I got lucky. That's all. And you get lucky. You take it in stride and you move on. But to see every single week that everyone there was loading 700, 800, 900 pounds on the bar to squat, it makes you realize like, oh, this ain't shit, right? And then you're like, I can do that.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
The same thing when I came to Death Wish, I had a 450 bench, and to see everyone there constantly over 5, I'm like, people, this is possible, right?
Well, that's how I felt about the 700 deadlift.
And then
I was so excited,
people.
And then it's like, Rick's pulling this, or Andrew's pulling this, or Scott's taking 800 for a ride of like 20.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, fuck.
Scott's a great puller.
He is a great puller.
Real wealth of knowledge too.
Yeah.
Good guy.
Yeah. I always feel bad picking his brain, because he like was always training for something big, and the last thing I think he wants is like some some semi person who thinks he's cool. Hey, how do I do this and not die? You know,
No,
like,
he's nice. He's just quiet. He's nice though.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
But yeah, humanizing big weights is an important step if you want to like pursue that. Like that's the best way I can put it, because you know, like you're wearing a West Side shirt, so I'm always thinking of like Louis. Like he always says, you know, rest in peace. But he's always like, you know, run with the lame, you'll catch a limp, right? Like so if you train around a bunch of suck lifters, guess what? You're probably gonna fucking suck.
Yeah.
But if you train around people who are good, it's gonna rub off eventually. Yeah. And the other thing at West Side, I know they always used to talk about, like Dave Tate still talks about all the time, where as a better lifter in the gym, it is your responsibility to bring up those below you.
Yeah.
So when you know, if you're training and, you know, you got a crew, a newer guy comes in, he's weaker, you ought to take him under your wing, because a few things. One, if you can make him stronger, that shows your success and proficiency, not only as a lifter, but as a coach.
Yeah.
Which if you're in a crew, you should be striving to be good enough to be able to help those around you as they help you.
Mm-hmm.
But two, it provides someone who then gets stronger that can push you. So it makes both of you better.
That's true. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. So, like, you know, if one of my training partners benches less than me, guess what? It is my top priority to bring his bench up, because it then gives me someone else to push me.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, there's, like, a lighter lifter in our crew, or, you know, even, like, a bigger lifter who's just not good in his shirt yet. Like, it is my goal to raise his proficiency in the shirt, or, you know, or the other thing is, like, he may not be as good in the shirt as me, but he's stronger than me raw.
Yeah.
So I'm always picking his brain about what to do raw, and I'm trying to catch him raw, right? Like, that's a big goal for me, is to catch him raw.
He's gonna catch you in the shirt.
But then we put on the shirt, and it's like, how can I help him?
Yeah.
Right? Or like, what can I do, or what can we do? And you know, we've been blessed. We have some highly proficient lifters in our crew.
Yeah.
Like Tim Gale has benched 800 in a single ply, so we're always deferring to him. He's a great lifter. We have some great squatters in our gym. Ralph has become a great squatter, and you know, Alex, you know, was a really good squatter when he was lifting in gear with us, and a great puller for that matter. So it's all people to feed off of. If you can make it out to any kind of crew as much as you can, you're never going to benefit from anything more.
Yeah. So wrapping this whole thing up, I always ask everyone this question, and I think it's really important out there, because I think a lot of people I know have been hitting you up. People ask me, like, what should I do? Like, how do you work your programs and things like that? You know, what would you say to someone who is just coming in the gym for the first time? And I'm not talking about like an LA Fitness. I'm not talking about like a Planet Fitness. I'm saying like a gym in town. I'm saying like a Lion's Den, a Death Wish barbell, a big mill of a training facility. What would you tell them if that's the gym they chose to walk into the first time?
Don't be scared, and closed mouths don't get fed. Zach told me that. Like, if you
that's a oh my god.
If you don't ask questions, then people aren't going to answer them.
Holy shit, that was wow.
Zach told me that, and every time I talk to Zach, he'll drop a one-liner that like changes my entire perspective on life. And I'm sure you have the same experience with him.
Well, yeah, especially now with the benching on Sundays.
I remember one time I was at a meet and I said, you know, oh, Curtis Miller and Casey Williams were there. They're two great, raw lifters. Yeah. And he goes, well, did you talk to him? And I said, well, no, they were handling the lifter. I didn't want to bother him. And he just said, closed mouths don't get fed. And I immediately knew what he meant. And I was like, okay, anytime I see a big lifter at a meet now, because most of these people are actually nice. And as long as they're not lifting and you're not interrupting them, they'll talk to you.
I've never met an ass. Well, that's not true. I have. But, like, not like, not the one that I've, like, walked up to and was a dick to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, actually, it goes back to Jimmy Kolb. That's why he's such a great ambassador for the sport. He's not an asshole, right? Damn. So a lot of these people like that, they're not going to be mean to you. If you're looking to get strong and you want to go to, like, a proper, strength-oriented gym, like, be ready to ask questions, be ready to listen, be ready to learn, really, and you will, as long as you open yourself to it.
Dude, that is a great way to end this podcast. Closed mouths do not get fed. Dude, you are a wealth of knowledge. We're going to have to do this again, but
absolutely.
We did an hour.
Was it really an hour?
That's an hour.
Flew by.
We just hit an hour. I know. I wanted to try to keep it to an hour.
Felt like 20 minutes.
Dude, I know. Dude, this was like, that's what I'm saying. When I that's why I really want to, like, I'm glad I reached out to you, because I knew we were just going to because even
roll
before
right
this.
We were probably talking for like 40 minutes.
We were just going at it. It was great. And I was like, all right, we have to start this, because he's absolutely just dropping nuggets. And I'm like, because I think it's important, because not to, like, let this run more, but people always reach out to. I know, I'm sure they reach out to you, reach out to me, and it's good because I'm like, listen to Roman, listen to like Kelly that I just had on, or like some that Mary's on, like listen to him. Like these guys are really smart, and you'll learn a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to have like an unadulterated conversation about like things like that. But
for what it's worth, if you're struggling with your bench, I am very easy to reach at RPE FML. I will answer pretty much any DMs.
Yeah, say all your. So I'm gonna put it's gonna get put up live.
Yeah, there's a few things I ought to plug. Just people who have helped me. Deathwish Barbell Official on Instagram. That's our crew. Great group of people in Delco. Kolb Strong Scholarship. That's Jimmy's scholarship. If you have extra cash to donate, that's a really great a great thing that they're doing there that helped me a lot when I needed some cash. And it's scholarship fund that's directed at helping athletes in the high school and collegiate level afford meets, gear, stuff like that. I was very lucky to be part of the first class of athletes to win that. My Instagram for training is just RPE FML. You can reach me anytime if you got any questions. That's just kind of the harbor for all of my lifting stuff. Yeah, that's really all.
All right. Roman?
Thank you very much for having me on, bud.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.